Philip Segal joins us live. He's an attorney. It's not going to be easy for them.
It is not going to be easy, Shep. I think what you're going to see is GM, which fumbled this ignition switch issue, is going to go into overdrive, if you pardon the pun, trying to reduce the amount of damages they're going to need to pay. Because they say they want to fully compensate everybody. People want to be fully compensated. But what's full compensation for the victims and what GM thinks is full compensation are probably two very different numbers.
The bar is very high for proof here. You have to prove that GM knew and didn't care and knew people were going to die or were dying and didn't make the $2 a car change.
The worse it gets for GM is when you show they knew for as long as possible, when the switches first went. The longer they knew, the worse it is. The more they disregarded warnings, the worse it is. If you had an email that said, gee, we suspect these switches are not terribly good, and someone says, well, why don't we take care of that? That's very different from, I beg of you, change the switches are going to kill people. Nah, never mind, we can't afford it. Those are two very different kinds of negligence, very different kinds of corporate misbehavior. And it's all going to come down to what's in the emails. You have to see who exactly warned, what the language was. Was this just the ordinary screw-up in business, or was this cruel, complete disregard for safety at the expense of the bottom line? Those are two very different things, and they'll yield very different monetary results for the victims, I suspect.
A number of people were injured, a number of people died, a larger number of people were injured, but a much, much larger number of people owned these vehicles or drove these vehicles from time to time.
Right.
Can you see a scenario under which those people who were not injured, who could have been because of what GM did or didn't do they have action?
They might, because in that Toyota instance that you just talked about, people who had diminution of value of their cars did recover. About a quarter of the value that Toyota settled for was diminution of value. You're not going to get the huge numbers that you get if someone loses their life or is injured. But if you can't sell your GM car because people are scared of these switches, then yeah, you could maybe recover. But the number is going to be much, much lower the fewer people they can show were killed as a result, primarily, proximately, of these switches. That's the real killer for GM.
GM, like any other big corporation, obviously has a herd of very good lawyers. You have to if you're a big corporation. Sometimes a little guy doesn't. In this case,
you've got class action lawyers who can smell a huge pot of money.
Sure.
They have the money and the time and they will get funding for this from litigation finance. They'll be able to go through tens of thousands of emails. That's where it's going to be. It's going to be in the emails, and it's also going to be in the former employees of GM and Delphi. They can't go after current GM employees without a lawyer present. But at my company, Charles Griffin, we go after former employees. They have things to say. You don't have to have a lawyer with them if they don't work for GM anymore. They can tell you, ask for this in discovery, ask for that in discovery, make sure you ask for this document. You should be seeing this department's records, and you should be asking about this guy who used to work there with me, and I think he now lives in Japan, but he saw everything. That's really golden intelligence, and unless I miss my mark, they've probably got people spreading out right now, starting to make those calls.
And if your mom died in one of these crashes, that's exactly what you want.
Yep.
Philip, it's nice to see you again.